Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. Whoops, I need to push the wrong button. This one actually starts at recording. No, that doesn't. That one does. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. As you've already seen, those of you catching us live, joining me today, Tom Knighton. Tom is the attitude behind Bearing Arms. Tom, thanks for coming along today, man.
Anytime. Well, this week it would have sucked because I had COVID, but
Yeah.
anytime I'm not,
I was just thinking
flagrant.
earlier today, we caught timing on that very, very well because the last time you were on was just it was pre-vacation and pre-COVID. And then it was like 2 days after you were on, bingo. And now 2 weeks
Yeah,
later,
I,
you're on the tail end of it, right?
I was exposed that day because my son went to a concert. He got exposed to the concert. He came home. So I had been exposed that day, but wasn't showing any symptoms for a couple of days. Now I'm semi-recovered. This stuff lingers in the chest. It really does. It's, you know, as long as I don't have to do anything, I feel fine.
Okay. All right. Well, let's
Luckily, this
let's
doesn't count as anything.
let's do something. Let's actually talk about some news. Although it won't is I'm not going to
Okay.
send you out to the yard with a shovel and make you dig ditches or anything. But
That's
we
probably for the best, yeah.
we're actually here to cover news, and a good part of what I want to cover today is written by this really smart guy I know named Tom Knighton. Uh, article
Yeah.
article you put up looks like that the Giffords organization is, I don't want to call it a physical threat, but she's certainly throwing out threats, and it stops just shy of a physical threat. She's saying that anybody who a number of the Republicans that don't vote in favor of gun control are let's see here, but they're going to pay for it if they don't support gun control.
And I actually believe it because a threat like that will make them lapse so much they get hurt and then they'll have to pay the hospital bill. Because
Well, that
that's really about all Giffords is going to do to most lawmakers. I'm sorry, but you can't waltz into Alabama and throw a bunch of money at a Democrat and expect them to win. It's just not really how that's going to work. It's not going to work in Mississippi. It's not going to work in Texas. It's not going to work anywhere that they're trying. Let's be perfectly honest. The Republicans who were going to side with gun control are about the only ones who could have gotten away with it. Gun
yeah.
control,
Um,
right?
in
And
my home
it's
state of
just
South
not.
Dakota, registered Republicans outnumber registered Democrats 2.3 to 1.
Mhm.
That's not going to work
Yeah,
here.
it's no, and it's like they could try to go. Well, we've got polls that say Republicans support gun control too. Do you? Do you
Mm,
really? Because those polls are all self-reported Republicans, which means there's probably a lot of Democrats who are saying they're Republicans to skew the polling. That's one thing. And then even if some Republicans do support a certain degree of gun control, how high is it up on their priority list? Something
uh,
that the anti-gun side has really not done a good job of understanding is that no matter what the poll says about overall support, is that support going to be enough to make them vote for a completely different candidate? And that's how it's going to be, especially in a state like North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah. It's not how it's going to work.
yeah. Well, Utah. Speaking of Utah, they've got that wonderful rhino Mitt Romney is one of their senators. I think Mitt Romney is going to find out next time he's up for election that anti-gun stuff doesn't really work too well in Utah.
I do not know a single. I have a lot of friends in Utah. It's surprising how many people I know in a state that's so far from my native Georgia, and not a single one of them supports Mitt Romney. Not a one. I don't hang out with a bunch of Utah liberals.
Right.
These are all conservative, libertarian leaning Utah residents, and they all despise Romney. All of them. It's actually kind of impressive.
Well, let's see here. I got to get. Let me hit this so I can see comments. Oh, George actually has a really good comment in here. Let me throw this up here real quick. George Geller over on the YouTube side says the only poll that matters is the one on election day, and then only if there's not too much cheating. Now we have to be careful with that.
That's true.
Simply because I've had a warning, a very stern one from YouTube about saying things about the 2020 election. So, I'm not going to comment about the 2020 election. I'm just going to say I agree with you, George.
2022. It'd be nice if the 2022 election is a much fairer election. Which is something we should be striving for regardless.
Yes.
Every election should be more fair than the ones before it. So YouTube should not have a problem with that basic statement.
Should not. All elections should be free, fair, and transparent.
Yes.
There is one huge news that'll be in the media. It'll be in the legacy media for all of about 12 hours. I think its time in the legacy media is about done. I'll be talking about this story for years. I still talk about the Clackamas Mall shooting. Right. So, and I'll be talking about this one and the Clackamas Mall shooting was a decade ago. I'll be talking about this one for the same amount of time, if not longer. In the Indianapolis area last night, 3 people were fatally shot, 2 were injured, including a 12-year-old girl, after a man with a rifle opened fire in a food court, and an armed civilian shot and killed that armed man, police said. The man entered the Greenwood Park Mall Sunday evening with a rifle and several magazines of ammunition and began firing in the food court. The 3 people who died were, in addition to the man with the rifle, the identity of the gunman and a possible motive weren't immediately known. Get this, I love this. A 22-year-old from nearby Bartholomew County who was legally carrying a firearm at the mall shot and killed the gunman, the police spokesperson said at a news conference that night. Last night. I watched that news conference on YouTube. Obviously, I didn't hear. I went to bed very early last night. It hadn't hit the news yet. I watched the news conference about 4 a.m. when I woke up this morning. 22-year-old young man. And from what I've been able to gather through multiple media sources, grandfather taught him to shoot. I don't know if he's had any formal training or not. However, 22-year-old young man carrying and here's gunfire starts, runs to the sound of the guns and stops it. And I don't have it ready, but off of your Twitter feed, Tom, I seen Shannon Watts. You replied to Shannon Watts. She's saying this is not what the Second Amendment's about. No, this is exactly what the Second Amendment is about.
Well, Shannon Watts and a lot of other people tried to make the case that this kid was carrying illegally. And I say kid because, when you're 48, they're a kid, But, law-abiding citizen carrying a firearm, by all indications, in compliance with the Indiana state law.
Which is a permitless carry state.
Right. Apparently the mall had a policy against guns, but that didn't convey any legal authority. And I haven't done research to confirm that. But he goes into this mall, carrying a firearm lawfully, uses it lawfully, and I'll be damned. The anti-gunners are still losing their mind. They're claiming he carried illegally. He was referred to
And
by, I
thank
think,
goodness
the
he
mayor
did.
or the governor as a good Samaritan, which is perfect, which is an accurate summation. They're like, good Samaritans don't kill people. Well, when it stops 15 or 20 more people dying, we just went through mass shootings. We had one on July 4th. We had one, we had Uvalde, Buffalo. We've had way too many mass shootings as it was. And this guy's in the right place at the right time with the will to act, and he did. He put himself in the line of fire in an effort to save lives. That, to me, is more of a good Samaritan act than agitating for higher taxes for people that don't include you.
Yes,
You don't
absolutely.
you don't get to play that you're super moral because you wouldn't take a life. This guy saved an untold number of lives.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
He did what Shannon Watts says never happens. He stopped a mass shooting in progress. Good guy with a gun. Once
couple
again,
comments. George, yes. Do you know if the 20-year-old hero violated the mall's no gun policy? I think I saw that news someplace. I do believe, yeah, there was a no gun policy, and yes, obviously, if there was, he violated it. And then John followed up and said, "Yep, ignored the gun-free zone of the mall. However, even the mall said it was okay with what he did." I hadn't found that yet, but yeah. And I wonder how long that mall is going to be a gun-free zone.
Right? It's that area is pro-gun. People don't consider Indiana as one of these pro-gun states, but I know a number of people who live in Indianapolis. One friend of mine, it seems he was on Facebook, his daughter was at that mall when it happened. He was kind of disappointed, though, because she was carrying a firearm, and he would have loved to have reported that it was his daughter who put the son of you-know-what down.
Yeah.
So that was his disappointment with it was, darn, she didn't get to do it. You know what? It's pretty clear he wasn't in that mall alive. All right, that was off the table from the moment he decided to pick that mall.
Yeah.
Yet he picked a gun-free zone.
He did.
And someone who did not respect that put an end to it. And for that to be the takeaway that some of these people have really shows you how twisted and warped they are.
Well, and I want to point out,
we know they want higher body count, but
I'm pretty sure now. I want to point out, neither you nor I are lawyers, and I will ask Alex Uli when he's on next time about this. Alex is an attorney. He is an attorney in Indiana. I believe the law in Indiana is that no gun signs do not hold the force of law. A no gun sign basically means we wish you wouldn't carry a gun here, but if they discover you're carrying a gun, they can ask you to leave. If you leave, no problem. No law has been broken. If not, it's criminal
trespass.
Yeah.
Right. We've got that's the same status quo here in Georgia.
And South Dakota. Yep.
Anywhere. If it says no gun zone, then you should probably make shields so they don't ask you to leave. That's pretty much how that works. In a lot of places, they have to sign up because corporate says they have to have it. You can walk in there openly carrying, and they're not going to say anything.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible that is the law in Indiana, and if so, he's carrying illegally. He just went someplace that said they didn't want a gun. Well, I don't want to get shot while I'm shopping.
And once again, I'm going to say, thank goodness he did. He saved who knows how many lives. I'd love to find out how many additional magazines this jerk, the active killer, had on him. Oh, and by the way,
Same.
the active killer, it appears past background checks, and Indiana does have a red flag law currently. Red
Yep.
flag laws don't stop
Really, that
these
did a lot of
things.
good.
Yeah.
No, it's you really look at who gets caught with red flag laws. They're not shooters. They're people who say, you know, I'm depressed. People who, you know, make off the cuff comments that they're never going to act on. As shooters,
There are people who are going through
guys don't get
a
reported.
vindictive divorce. That's who gets caught up
Yeah,
in red flag laws.
those guys, those kind of people. It's we at some point you've got to understand, that it's red flag laws aren't stopping mass shooters. Didn't stop one here. Didn't stop the guy in Buffalo. It didn't stop the guy in Highland Park, Illinois. That's 3 mass shooters just this year in red law states.
I want to move about 350 miles away, maybe 400 miles away here. We had another story that I want to comment on, and then the other. And normally, yes, there's a 72-hour rule. Facts again, just as 2 weeks ago when Tom was on, we talked about the parade shooter in Illinois because the facts were very clear and came out right away and weren't changing. We're same rule applies here. We're talking about verified facts that came out quickly and are not changing. This one got a story, believe it or not, off NPR that talking about. No, I'm sorry. This one is off Fox 2 now. St. Charles, Missouri. St. Charles Police Department says a 26-year-old man from St. Louis City on a violent crime spree was shot and killed by another man. The man who was witnessing an armed robbery in the progress at a Quip Trip on First Capitol Drive. Police say the crime spree began around 3 a.m. Saturday morning with an armed robbery at Mobile on the Run on 5th Street. The suspect held a knife to the 43-year-old female clerk's throat while she opened the cash register. Suspect then pushed her to the floor, stole the money from the register, and then dragged her back to the store asking where the safe was. When the clerk wasn't able to access the safe, the suspect dragged her back to the front counter where she opened a second register in an attempt to stop the assault on her. After going through the second register, the suspect fled the store in a black SUV. Clerk suffered lacerations for life to her left wrist, right hand, and neck. She was taken to an area hospital with 9 non-life-threatening injuries. Basically what happens then is the guy goes to another convenience store, does the exact same thing, except a guy was walking out. He had just finished his transaction, notices what's happening, goes in, one between the eyes, and the to quote active self-protection channel, the bad guy takes the room temperature challenge, and so another case, yet another case of an armed citizen stopping a crime spree in progress. Oh, by the way, the black SUV had been stolen earlier that day. Yeah, big shock.
Shocked and appalled. I'm shocked and appalled because usually criminals are so law-abiding.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the stealing a car, but putting a knife to someone's throat and money twice. I mean, what is this world coming to when you can't even trust honest criminals? Jeez.
Man, it's just.
And, look, I believe in cases like this, the best way to deal with them is to win the heart and mind, preferably with 2 to the heart and 1 to the mind.
There you go.
I think that's a good way to go, and it sounds like I'm not alone in that. And,
well, and let's
okay, he didn't.
do it quick. We don't want these people to suffer, so you want to do it quickly. You know, bang, bang, bang. You don't want them to, them to suffer, not bang, bang, bang. Do it quickly so they don't go through a lot of suffering.
Actually, I don't. I'm just. It's while they're suffering, they might hurt somebody else.
Right.
That's the only reason I do it quick. I don't actually care about their. I just you give up your. I worry about that with, game animals and people I care about. But these people are animals, and I don't care about them. They're not,
but not game animals.
So, right? They're the wrong kind of animals because they really frown if you put them in the freezer.
Back to the
so
first.
I hear. I've never checked this out myself.
Back to the first episode, or the first story we talked about. The 20-year-old had 2 rifles. The second one was in his backpack left in the men's room. Yeah, they took quite a while to clear that mall, and it wasn't clear. I do not know if the mall is open today. I somewhat doubt it. It wasn't clear as of earlier today when the mall was going to reopen. But Gerald is right there with you. Do it quickly to stop the threat. Yep.
Yeah, so I don't actually care about their suffering. I'm worried about my suffering.
Well, you're stopping suffering one way or the other.
Right. Well, if I stop their suffering, there's no way they can make me suffer.
Yeah, exactly. One more story that I've got several that I want to talk about by this guy Tom Knighton, but one story that I caught off of Deadline.com, which is an NBC website. NBC Nightly News on Sunday devoted the first 14 minutes of the broadcast to a single story: shootings that unfolded in 4 major cities during the previous night. 3 guesses as to the commonalities of these shootings, and the first 2 don't count, Tom.
Clearly this was, rabid, aggressive Amish people.
Do you think it could maybe be that they all occurred in shall not be allowed states and cities?
Well, it's like that, but this doesn't surprise me. We've seen over and over and over again while researchers try to make the case that it somehow, works the other way. We see more in the anti-gun cities than we do in the pro-gun rural areas.
Yeah.
Now,
or the pro-gun cities, because we've got them.
Oh yeah, yeah. We don't spend a lot of time talking about how just out of control violent crime is in Oklahoma City.
Or Dallas.
Or Dallas. In fact, while every other state having skyrocketing crime, places like Dallas and Miami actually reported a drop in violent crime.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Miami is pro-gun, but already pro-gun state, and there's not a lot they can do about, gun control there. So the results work out about the same.
And it's you don't often hear about the mean streets of Tucson, or Phoenix.
Well, you haven't heard about the mean streets of Tucson since like 1880.
Which, again, if we're talking about back then, and it wasn't Tucson, it was, I'm forgetting where the OK Corral was, but that was an argument over a gun-free zone.
Tombstone.
Yeah, Tombstone. Arizona. There we go. Yeah.
Yes. A lot of people, the Wild West, the most famous gunfight from the Wild West was gun control.
Yes. It absolutely was. When Wyatt Earp said, "No guns in this town except for the gun I and my buddies have." those are the guns that are allowed in this town. Sound familiar?
And yeah, it's funny how often it works out that the people who they they don't trust you or me with a gun, but they trust themselves. And I get that. I mean, I get not trusting other people. I'm not a very trusting person either. I recognize that the only way I can make sure my right to own a gun is preserved is to preserve the right for everybody. You know, Earp let about the bad.
Repeat that. You broke up a little bit. Repeat that last sentence.
I said Earp wasn't too worried about it because he had a badge.
Yeah. And friends.
And friends.
I want to the next three of them I have up here, and we're coming down to the bottom of the hour, but the next three of them I have up here for show notes were written by this really smart guy I know named Tom Knighton. Maryland complies with the Bruin decision. Looks like Maryland is actually doing what the Supreme Court intended, and you almost give them an attaboy over this.
Right. It's they're doing what they're supposed to do. I can't give them a lot of credit because what choice do they really legally have? But on the same token, you know, Hogan could have gone, well, we're not gonna do anything, and just it never happened. He doesn't go that direction, and I understand there's maybe a couple places where they are doing like that, but you know, he's like, nope, we're going to comply with the ruling. Now Maryland is a shall issue state,
as it should have been.
Never
I wish New York would do what I wish New Jersey, New York, California would do what Maryland is doing.
Yes.
No.
They really have a lot of wiggle room there. It's not.
No, if you really read the Bruin decision, and oh, by the way, you know, Supreme Court cases are commonly referred in short by the winner of the case, and Roe v. Wade, Roe actually, or baby Roe, Roe was the winner of that case. Brown versus the Board of Education. Brown was the winner of that case. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association won it. I think everybody says Bruin because they don't want to spend 15 minutes before getting to their point saying New York State Rifle and Pistol Association or NYSERPA.
Well, there's that, and there's also the fact they all pretty much figured there will be additional New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus whoever cases overturning laws, and so it's just easier to the loser in these.
Yeah, there you go. Next story that smart guy Knighton wrote. Apparently, there was a bunker at a San Jose homeless encampment, and there was a lot of stolen stuff found there, including firearms. But what I want to know, Tom, is did they go through the California background check, and did they have background checks for all the ammo that was with those firearms and all that good stuff?
Not only did they not do that, they also did not have homeowners insurance, as the city of San Jose actually requires now. So they were just doing everything wrong.
Oh,
yeah. The fact that they stole guns is completely irrelevant, and it was stuff that really is the big kicker. And it was actually pretty impressive. This bunker is, you know, we used a bunker, and it's really probably was not a nature per se, but it was really impressively built. It had support beams, plywood walls. It was, you know, I'm sitting here going, thinking that, you know, could have built a house with all that wood.
Yeah,
and they would be homeless.
I haven't dug into that. All I've read so far is your story on it. I haven't gone through the links and looked at the encampment itself. But to say that the they're homeless means they're always stoned, drugged out, and incapable. That's painting with a very broad brush and not always true.
No, these guys were capable. Um, it's just a shame they turned it to something like this. But it had basically a glorified spider hole opening. It was not something police were just going to peek in for no reason. It was actually a good setup. But San Jose police found out. They went in there and they found a bunch of power tools uh, and firearms.
Um, Last story I'm going to cover today, and we're a little past time, but I still want to go through this. I found this one. This story was actually released a few days ago. Looks like a gun control group bought a bunch of empty school buses and went to protest at Ted Cruz's house. And I want to do a little bit of a different take on it than you did. It's quite common when there's a protest here in South Dakota. If somebody from the left side or from the Democratic side protests, they come in on buses, and that's quite common because it's paid. The people that get on there, and I've got nothing to prove this, but I've seen enough. I will bet money on it. Those buses and the people on them are paid to be there. Whereas the rest of us show up in our cars one by one. We get there when we get there. The other side shows up in buses, and I'm pretty sure when they get off the bus at the other side, the cash is handed out or the checks or the whatever are handed out. But this particular protest, convoy of 52 yellow school buses filled with items and 4,368 empty seats to represent children killed by gun violence since 2020, kicked off its campaign by visiting Ted Cruz, who's a staunch opponent of gun control. Mobile Museum was created by the REF, a gun control advocacy group founded by Manuel and Patricia Oliver. Their son, Joaquin Oliver, was killed in the 2018 Parkland shooting. And this is where I'm going to call a little bit of Bravo Sierra. Manuel Oliver also hand-delivered a letter to Cruz that Joaquin wrote when he was 12 years old, urging for universal background checks. A 12-year-old doesn't know about that stuff, period. I'm calling Bravo Sierra on these people.
Well, let's also remember that the father here is this who was kicked out of the Biden gun control event here a couple weeks ago. He was brought in because he was a gun control advocate, and he's sitting there mouthing off to the president. He's a loudmouth. He's a proud loudmouth. And so now they're just finding a different way to be loud. You know, these are, you know, even if his son wrote that letter, who cares? Not determine whether or not we're going to support laws based on the thoughts of 12-year-olds. And even if even if that 12-year-old dies in gun violence, let's remember that the person who took his son's life passed a background check.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
He passed the background check because the Broward County Sheriff's Department never pressed domestic violence charges against him, despite the fact that all indications are that they were perfectly warranted. So, sorry, you don't get to pull we need universal background check laws. You know, invoking your dead son like that because what saved his life.
No, it certainly wouldn't have. And all right, we're gonna go ahead and leave it there. I got to turn around. I got a Polite Society podcast to do in less than 25 minutes, so I need to get the whole set turned around. But Tom, thanks so much, man, for joining me. I always enjoy the time we have together, man.
Same. Same.
All right,
Love
folks,
doing it.
do come join me 5 p.m. Central Time the rest of the week, and come join me in about 24 minutes when we do the Polite Society podcast right here.